Why nobody could defeat Africa's deadliest warrior king. Imagine standing on an open African plain at sunrise. The ground is silent. Then you hear it. Not the sound of drums. Not the sound of horses. Just thousands of feet striking the earth in perfect rhythm. Closer, closer, closer. An army is coming. The warriors carry shields taller than their bodies. In their hands is a short spear designed for only one purpose: killing at arm's length. There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. By the time you see them, the battle is already over. For nearly 2 centuries, one question has echoed through African history. How did a young man, born with almost nothing, transform a small and overlooked clan into the most feared military power in southern Africa? How did entire kingdoms disappear in the shadow of his name? And why, more than 190 years after his death, does the name Shaka Zulu still inspire admiration, fear, and endless debate? Some called him a military genius. Others called him a ruthless conqueror. But everyone agreed on one thing. Once Shaka decided to fight you, survival became almost impossible. This is not just the story of a king. It is the story of how one man changed warfare forever and built an empire that made the world pay attention to Africa. And before this story ends, you'll discover why the greatest threat to Shaka Zulu was never another army. It came from much closer to home. To understand why Shaka became one of history's most feared commanders, we have to travel back to southern Africa over 200 years ago. Long before modern borders existed, the land was divided into dozens of small chiefdoms. Every valley, every river, and every stretch of grassland belonged to different communities. Some traded peacefully. Others fought over cattle, water, and fertile land. Power was measured by the size of your herd. Respect was earned through courage. And survival depended on the strength of your warriors. Among these communities was a relatively small clan known as the Zulu. At the time, almost no one imagined this tiny kingdom would one day dominate much of southern Africa. Even fewer believed its future would rest in the hands of a boy who was treated as an outsider from the day he was born. Around 1787, Shaka was born to Senzangakona, the chief of the Zulu and Nandi. Their relationship was controversial, and according to many historical accounts, Shaka and his mother faced rejection and humiliation. Instead of growing up surrounded by luxury, the young Shaka experienced hardship. He learned what it meant to be mocked. He learned what it meant to be underestimated. Every insult became fuel. Every hardship became a lesson. As Nandi searched for safety, she and Shaka moved between different communities, never knowing where they truly belonged. But these difficult years shaped something extraordinary. While other boys dreamed of becoming respected warriors, Shaka watched everything around him. He studied how chiefs ruled. He observed how battles were won and lost. He noticed the mistakes experienced warriors kept making. Without realizing it, he was already preparing for a future no one could imagine. As Shaka grew older, his incredible physical strength began to stand out. He could march farther than most men. He endured pain without complaint. His discipline impressed even experienced soldiers. Eventually, he entered the service of Dingiswayo, the powerful leader of the Mthethwa Confederacy. This moment changed everything. Dingiswayo was far more than a chief. He was a brilliant strategist who understood that intelligence could be just as valuable as courage. Under his command, Shaka received military training unlike anything he had experienced before. Day after day, he practiced until exhaustion, running for miles barefoot, learning formation after formation, training his body to ignore fear. While others rested, Shaka continued improving. Soon, fellow warriors began noticing something unusual. He didn't simply follow orders. He questioned everything. Why did armies stop fighting when they threw their spears? Why did battles drag on for hours? Why should a warrior stay far away from his enemy instead of ending the fight face to face? These questions would eventually change African warfare forever. Before long, Shaka became one of Dingiswayo's most trusted warriors. His courage in battle earned respect. His discipline inspired loyalty. And his ability to think differently caught the attention of every commander around him. But destiny was preparing an even greater test. Back in the Zulu homeland, Chief Senzangakona died. His death created a dangerous struggle for power. Several men believed they deserved to rule. Many expected the Zulu Kingdom to collapse into chaos. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. With the support of Dingiswayo and loyal warriors, Shaka returned to claim leadership of the Zulu. The overlooked boy, the rejected son, the warrior nobody expected, was now the leader of a kingdom that barely mattered. But Shaka had no intention of remaining a minor chief. He looked across the plains and saw something others could not. He saw the possibility of building an army unlike any Africa had ever witnessed. He believed warriors could move faster, fight harder, show greater discipline, and conquer enemies before they even understood what was happening. The small Zulu kingdom was about to become the birthplace of a military revolution. The kingdoms surrounding Shaka had no idea what was coming. And soon, the name Zulu would spread across southern Africa with a force that few thought possible. The first warriors laughed. When Shaka ordered them to throw away the long-throwing spears they had trusted for generations, many believed their new king had lost his mind. "You want us to fight face to face?" It sounded like suicide. Every warrior in southern Africa knew the rules of battle. Armies stood apart, hurled their spears, exchanged volleys, and waited for the weaker side to retreat. Most battles ended before warriors even came within arm's reach. Shaka saw something everyone else had missed. These battles were too slow, too unpredictable, too forgiving. If your enemy could run away, they would simply return stronger another day. Shaka wanted to end wars in a single crushing blow. That decision would change African warfare forever. But before we continue, remember this. The next innovations you're about to see were so effective that neighboring kingdoms completely changed the way they prepared for war. Some allied against the Zulu. Others abandoned their homes rather than face them. This was no longer about winning battles. It was about creating an army that inspired fear before it even arrived. Shaka's first revolutionary change was surprisingly simple. He shortened the spear. At first glance, it looked less impressive than the weapons warriors already carried. The blade was broader. The shaft was shorter. It could no longer be thrown effectively. Instead, it was designed to be driven directly into an opponent at close range. This weapon became known as the iklwa, a name inspired by the sound made when it was pulled from a body. That chilling sound became one of the symbols of the Zulu army. Shaka believed a warrior should never throw away his only weapon. If you threw your spear, you became vulnerable. If you kept it in your hands, you controlled the fight. Many experienced warriors resisted. Some openly questioned their king. Others secretly believed the new weapon would get them killed. Shaka listened. Then he proved them wrong. During training, he demonstrated exactly how devastating close combat could be when every warrior fought with speed, discipline, and absolute confidence. Slowly, the doubters fell silent. Then came the training. This was where ordinary men became something far more dangerous. Most armies trained when necessary. Shaka trained every single day. There were no shortcuts, no excuses. Warriors ran across rocky ground barefoot until their feet became as hard as leather. Many begged for sandals. Shaka refused. He believed nothing should slow his soldiers during battle. Those who complained were pushed even harder. Those who showed determination earned respect. Every march strengthened their endurance. Every drill sharpened their instincts. Every mistake carried consequences. Soon, Zulu warriors could cover astonishing distances in a single day while still arriving ready to fight. Neighboring armies often reached battlefields exhausted. The Zulu arrived prepared. Speed had become a weapon. Discipline mattered just as much as strength. Every shield had a purpose. Every movement had meaning. Every warrior knew exactly where he belonged. There was no room for panic. No room for confusion. No room for hesitation. While enemy armies often fought as scattered groups, Shaka wanted thousands of warriors to move as if they shared one mind. Imagine standing across the battlefield. Dust rises into the sky. Thousands of shields move together. No shouting. No disorder. Only perfect rhythm. It looked less like an army, and more like a single unstoppable force. But Shaka's greatest military invention was still to come. He studied animals carefully, especially the way predators hunted. One lesson stood out above all others. The strongest predator rarely attacks head-on. It surrounds, traps. It leaves no escape. From that observation came one of history's most famous battlefield formations, the buffalo horns. At the center stood the strongest and most experienced warriors. This was the chest. Their job was simple: hold the enemy in place, keep them focused, prevent them from escaping. Meanwhile, younger and faster warriors raced around both sides of the battlefield. These became the horns. Their mission was not to fight immediately. It was to surround, to close every escape route, to strike from the sides and the rear at exactly the right moment. Behind them waited the reserve force, the loins. Fresh warriors rested while the battle unfolded. If the front line weakened, they charged. If the enemy broke through, they responded. If victory was close, they delivered the final blow. The system was brilliantly simple. Once the horns closed, there was nowhere left to run. Imagine realizing that every path behind you has disappeared. Every direction is blocked by warriors carrying massive shields. The battle has become a trap. Panic spreads. Formation collapses. And from that moment, defeat becomes almost certain. The first kingdoms to face these tactics didn't understand what was happening. They expected battles they had fought for generations. Instead, they encountered an army unlike anything Southern Africa had ever seen. The Zulu didn't stop. They advanced relentlessly. Every step was coordinated. Every charge had purpose. Enemy commanders watched in disbelief as their warriors became surrounded faster than they could react. Some armies broke within minutes. Others fled before the battle had truly begun. Word spread across the region with astonishing speed. A new military power had emerged. Villages whispered the same warning around their evening fires. If the Zulu are coming, leave before they arrive. Fear was becoming Shaka's greatest ally. Long before his warriors reached the battlefield, stories of their victories had already weakened the resolve of those waiting to face them. And this was only the beginning, because the battles that followed would transform Shaka from a respected king into a legend whose name would echo across Africa for generations. In the next chapter, entire kingdoms will unite in a desperate attempt to stop him. Some will outnumber the Zulus several times over. None of them realize they are walking into the deadliest military machine Southern Africa has ever witnessed. The first kingdom believed it was just another border conflict. The second believed the first had simply been weak. The third was certain that superior numbers would finally stop Shaka. They all made the same mistake. They thought they were fighting a man. In reality, they were facing a military system unlike anything Southern Africa had ever seen. And with every victory, Shaka became more dangerous. Not because his army was growing larger, because every battle taught him how to make it even deadlier. The Zulu warriors marched before dawn. No songs, no celebrations, no unnecessary words. Only the steady rhythm of thousands of bare feet striking the earth. Every warrior carried the same shield, the same weapon, the same purpose. Villagers watching from distant hills knew exactly what it meant. The Zulu army was coming, and history had shown that wherever it marched, the map changed forever. One after another, neighboring chiefdoms challenged Shaka. Some believed they could defeat him through sheer numbers. Others formed alliances, hoping several armies together could crush the Zulu once and for all. On paper, it looked impossible for Shaka to survive. Some enemy forces outnumbered his warriors by thousands. But battles are not won on paper. They are won through leadership. And Shaka understood something few commanders truly appreciated. An army without discipline is just a crowd carrying weapons. As the enemy advanced, they expected the Zulu to panic under the pressure of superior numbers. Instead, the Zulu stood perfectly still, shields locked together, spears ready, eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. There was no fear, only patience. Then came the signal. The center advanced. The enemy charged with confidence. Exactly as Shaka had predicted. Hidden by clouds of dust, the buffalo horns began moving. Faster than the enemy realized. Warriors raced around both flanks. At first, the opposing commanders ignored them. By the time they understood what was happening, it was already too late. The horns closed behind them. Every escape route vanished. Panic spread through the ranks. Orders became impossible to hear. Men pushed against one another, desperate to flee. But there was nowhere left to run. The battle had become a trap. What followed lasted only moments. The discipline of the Zulu army overwhelmed the confusion of their enemies. When the dust finally settled, another kingdom had fallen. Victory after victory transformed the Zulu Kingdom. Every conquest brought new cattle, new land, and new warriors. Some defeated enemies chose to join Shaka instead of resisting him. They had witnessed his strength firsthand. Serving him offered a better chance of survival than fighting against him. Shaka welcomed skilled warriors, but loyalty came first. Those who joined the Zulu had to follow the same strict rules as everyone else. No exceptions. No favoritism. Whether you were born Zulu or came from a conquered kingdom, discipline was everything. This policy allowed his army to grow at an astonishing pace. Within just a few years, the small kingdom that few had noticed had become one of the most powerful states in southern Africa. But with power came fear. Stories about Shaka spread faster than his armies. Some claimed he could march his warriors farther than anyone believed possible. Others insisted he never lost a battle. Some stories became exaggerated over time. As with many legendary rulers, separating fact from myth is difficult. What is certain is that his reputation alone influenced the decisions of neighboring rulers. Some abandoned their villages before the Zulu even arrived. Others surrendered without fighting. Entire communities migrated in search of safety. Historians still debate the exact causes of this period of upheaval, often called the Mfikane or the crushing. Many factors, including warfare, political rivalries, environmental pressures, and regional migrations, contributed to these dramatic changes. Shaka's campaigns played an important role, but they were part of a much larger and more complex historical picture. Even so, one fact remained undeniable. The balance of power across southern Africa had changed forever. As the Zulu Kingdom expanded, Shaka became more than a military commander. He became a symbol. To his followers, he represented strength, order, and unity. To his enemies, he became the name whispered around campfires before battle. Parents warned their children. Chiefs strengthened their defenses. Messengers carried urgent reports across the region. The Zulu are moving. Sometimes, that warning alone was enough to empty entire settlements. Fear had become another weapon in Shaka's arsenal. And unlike a spear, fear could travel for hundreds of miles. Yet success came with a price. The larger the kingdom became, the more difficult it was to control. Every new territory needed loyal leaders. Every conquered people had to be governed. Every victory created new rivals. Some obeyed Shaka because they admired him. Others obeyed because they feared him. Fear can build an empire. But history has shown that fear alone rarely keeps one together forever. Shaka had defeated nearly every enemy who stood before him on the battlefield. He had outthought rival commanders. He had reshaped the art of war. He had turned a small kingdom into a regional power that changed African history. But the danger that would ultimately end his reign was already growing inside his own kingdom. The warriors who had conquered countless enemies could not protect their king from betrayal. Because the greatest battle of Shaka Zulu's life would not be fought against a foreign army. It would be fought against the people who stood closest to his throne. For years, Shaka Zulu had done what many believed was impossible. He had transformed a small and overlooked kingdom into the most feared military power in southern Africa. His warriors had defeated larger armies. His tactics had rewritten the rules of war. His name alone was enough to make rival chiefs reconsider going to battle. From the outside, his empire looked stronger than ever. But history has a way of hiding its greatest dangers behind its greatest victories. And for Shaka, that danger was no longer beyond the borders of his kingdom. It was inside them. In the late 1820s, tragedy struck. Shaka's mother, Nandi, passed away. For the warrior king who had conquered countless enemies, this was the deepest wound he had ever suffered. Historical accounts describe his grief as overwhelming. Nandi had stood beside him through rejection, hardship, and exile. She had believed in him when almost no one else did. Now she was gone. According to several historical traditions, Shaka ordered an extended period of mourning across the kingdom. Some accounts claim these measures were extremely harsh, though historians continue to debate the exact details and whether later stories exaggerated them. Whether every story is accurate or not, one thing is clear. The kingdom began to change. The disciplined ruler who had once focused entirely on strategy and expansion seemed increasingly consumed by grief. Some of his closest advisors grew uneasy. Others began to fear where his decisions might lead. For the first time in years, cracks were beginning to appear inside the empire. Among those watching closely were Shaka's own half-brothers, Dingaan and Mlangana. They had witnessed his rise. They understood his power, but they also knew something no enemy could. Every king has moments when his guard is down. If anyone hoped to remove Shaka from the throne, this might be the only chance. One day in September 1828, while many of his most loyal warriors were away, the brothers made their move. They entered the royal enclosure. For a brief moment, the man who had survived countless battles stood almost alone. No great army surrounded him. No battle formation protected him. No shield wall stood between him and danger. The greatest warrior king in southern Africa was facing an enemy he never expected. His own family. The attack happened quickly. Shaka was stabbed multiple times. As he fell to the ground, one of history's greatest military leaders met an end unlike any battlefield he had ever conquered. According to tradition, his final words were a warning. He is said to have predicted that those who killed him would not rule forever, and that people arriving from across the sea would one day dominate the land. Whether those exact words were spoken remains uncertain. But within a few decades, European colonial expansion dramatically reshaped southern Africa. History would remember the prophecy, whether literal or symbolic, as one of the most haunting moments in the story of Shaka Zulu. After his death, Dingaan claimed the throne. The Zulu Kingdom continued to exist and remained a powerful force. Years later, under King Cetshwayo, Zulu warriors achieved one of the most remarkable victories in military history at the Battle of Isandawana in 1879, defeating a British force in a stunning surprise. Even after Shaka was gone, the military system he had built continued to influence generations of Zulu warriors. His ideas outlived him. His discipline outlived him. His legacy outlived him. Military historians around the world still study the speed, organization, and tactical innovations that made the Zulu army so formidable. To some, Shaka was a visionary military genius. To others, he was a ruthless conqueror whose campaigns brought immense suffering. The truth is more complex than either image alone. Like many powerful rulers in history, his legacy includes extraordinary achievements as well as painful consequences. But one fact is impossible to deny. He changed the course of African history. A boy who was once rejected became a king who reshaped warfare, and a leader whose name is still spoken nearly 200 years after his death. That is why the story of Shaka Zulu has never truly ended. It continues every time historians debate his legacy, every time visitors stand on the battlefields where his warriors once marched. And every time someone asks the question that brought us here today, why could nobody defeat Africa's deadliest warrior king? Because defeating Shaka was never just about defeating one man. It meant defeating an idea built on discipline, innovation, and absolute determination. If you enjoyed uncovering the true story behind Shaka Zulu, the next journey is even more unbelievable. Imagine an African emperor so wealthy that when he traveled across the Sahara, he gave away so much gold that entire economies struggled for years afterward. His pilgrimage stunned the medieval world and made one African empire famous across continents. Click the next video to discover the incredible story of Mansa Musa, the richest ruler in history, and how one journey changed the world's view of Africa forever.